A recent AM Best webinar examined how AM Best analysts rate ILS-affiliated collateralized reinsurers.
Let's begin with the ILS universe. The capacity provided by the ILS market is currently at about $98 billion, which consists of four components. The fastest growing component is collateralized reinsurance, which is approximately $55 billion worth of capacity. The next biggest is the cat bonds, which is about $30 billion worth of capacity. And sidecars and ILWs ran out the $13 billion worth of capacity. This is a table of the top 10 specialist ILS fund managers. You notice that in July 2000, if you compare the numbers in July 2018 and March 2019, you see that there's a diminution in AUM of about $2 billion or so. And that's kind of an indication that some investors have pulled out of the market due to the cat events of the past couple of years. You notice that CATCo is no longer on this list. A couple of years ago, it would have been on the list, but it's dropped out due to its well-publicized issues. Also not shown on this table is the fact that you have some capital that's trapped and can't be deployed. So the number you see here does not mean that number is available to add capacity to the reinsurance market. The cat events over the past couple of years have exposed some of the strengths and weaknesses of the ILS market. On the strength side, you had orderly payment of losses by the ILS market and without any hitches because the collateral obviously is there to make the payments. Although the events did expose the loss creep issues and expose the fact that CRs, collateralized reinsurers, are not exactly equivalent to traditional reinsurers from a cedent's perspective. And that's because of the limited claims development period for CRs versus traditional reinsurers. And so what you have is tail risk that goes back to the cedents based on the limited claims development period. Let's now talk about the rating process. I'll now turn this over to Dr. White-Tang to talk about the rating process.
Thank you, Manny. So let's go into this rating process. First, as usual, the main methodology for rating our insurance companies is the best credit rating methodology, BCRM. Other than that, there are several very important criteria that actually has to be included in this rating process. The first two criteria listed here discuss about the BCAR, that is the best capital adequacy ratio, which is a quantitative measure of the risk of the company relative to its available capital. The third criteria here talks about cat risk stress, which is second event cat stress, where the loss is applied directly to the capital rather than appear in the negatively required capital formula. The fourth criteria is the calculation of equity credit for different types of capitals, so such as common stock or hybrid-like preferred stocks. The fifth criteria, rating new company formation. Here we are based on this criteria to classify if the entity seeking rating is a new company or not. If the company is classified as a new company, there are certain constraints on some of the building block assessment. The last two criteria discuss about the tail risk back to the new code from the transformer and the treatment of that. All this methodology and criteria, you can find it in our website, in the underlying slide here. This concludes the session of the rating process. Let me give it back to Manny to continue the important rating consideration sessions.
Thanks, Wyatt. So we're now going to talk about important rating considerations as they relate to rated CRs. We'll begin with the idea of permanent capital. The concept of permanent capital is absolutely important at AM Best. And for us, the most permanent of the capital is common equity, and that receives full equity credit in our analyses. When we're presented with hybrid capital, such as preferred stock or trust preferreds, we do apply haircuts based on certain features. Maturity features, of course, the longer the maturity, the less of a haircut. Call features, debt service features such as mandatory payments. If the payments are mandatory, it probably gets more of a haircut. Subordination level to policyholders, treatment by regulators, and management intent. If we substantially haircut our capital, it can affect greatly available capital and then affect greatly the BACAR scores, which ultimately would make balance sheet strength somewhat inadequate. So the idea of permanent capital is of absolute importance in our rating analysis. We don't require any type of capital. We don't have any guidelines as to what kind of capital you ought to have, but just know that any hybrid capital would suffer severe haircuts.
You can view this webinar in its entirety by logging on to ambest.com. For AM Best TV, I'm John Weber.